Alright guys, this is 2.7, solve linear equations and then graphing inequalities. So some things to remember. You want to clear out your fractions, you want to simplify, you want to move or isolate variables and numbers to opposite sides of the equation. And then when dividing by a negative, you reverse the inequality sign. So, when graphing a linear equation, you need to know that this means greater than, and when we graph on the line, the number or point would be covered with the open circle, and then for your interval notation, you would be using parentheses. I will explain all this later in our examples. Greater than or equal to, be a solid circle and brackets. Less than would be an open circle and parentheses. Less than or equal to would be a closed circle and brackets. And our negative infinity and positive infinity would be brackets. And the way you know that these are closed and these are open, a good way to remember is if there's the line underneath, you're going to close those in. Ouch. Okay, so if we look at our first example, our x is greater than 1. It wants us to graph this inequality on the number line and then write in an interval notation. So here's how we're going to graph this guy. Okay, so it's a 1, right? X is greater than 1. So we want to put an open circle around 1 because it is less than, and it's not less than or equal to, okay? Then he's pointing to the positive direction on the number line, so we're going to go this way. And then to write our interval notation, you're going to use our 1 right here. And then we're going to the right, which is positive number, so it's a positive infinity sign. And parentheses. You're going to use the brackets when it's closed, remember. All right, let's look at this one here. X is less than or equal to 5. So it's going to be a closed circle on 5, and it's going to go to the left because that's where our arrow's pointing. That's always a key. Just know wherever your arrow's pointing, that's where you're going to go. And that's going to be a negative infinity because we're in the negative numbers. So to write it in that interval notation, you're going to have parentheses, negative infinity, and your 5, and then it's going to have a bracket because that's a closed circle over there. So if you need to pause it, I'm going to change the page to the next example. All right, let's look at this example. Let's look at 7x is greater than 9x minus 10. First of all, we need to solve it for x, right? So that we can graph our inequality. So we want to get our variables to one side. I like the left if we can do it, and our numbers to the other side. So minus our 9x from both sides. That gives us a negative 2x. Bring down your sign, and we're left with a negative 10. Now we want to get that x alone, so we want to divide by negative 2 to both sides. And that's where we get our x's less than 5. Now you notice I had to switch this because, like we said earlier, if you're dividing by a negative number, that is going to be reversed. Your sign will be reversed. All right, so we need to find 5. We're going to have an open circle. It's pointing toward it's going toward the negative numbers. So then to write that in interval notation, we're going to have our negative infinity with our parentheses and our 5, and that's also parentheses because that's not closed. Go ahead and pause it because I will be changing the page. All right, let's look at this. 12b plus 5 times b plus 5 is greater than or equal to 7b minus 5. So we need to first do our distribution. So that's where we get the 12b plus 5b plus 25 is greater than or equal to 7b minus 5. Then we're combining our like terms. So we get 17b plus 25 is greater than or equal to 7b minus 5. Now we want to get those numbers and variables to the opposite sides. So I'm going to minus my 7b from both sides. That's going to give me 10b. Then I'm going to subtract our 25 from both sides. That's going to give me a negative 30. So now I'm going to divide by 10 to both sides, and then I should get a negative 3. So b is greater than or equal to negative 3. We did not divide by a negative, so I will not change my sign around. So when it comes to graphing, we're going to find our negative 3. That is greater than or less or equal to, so it's going to be closed with a bracket around it. We're going toward the positive numbers. It's telling us to. It's pointed that way. Big clue right there to remember. And then that's positive infinity because it's going on and on and on. And we use our bracket, our parentheses. So for our interval notation, we're going to just bring this simply just straight down, okay? So look, negative 3 with the bracket, negative 3 with the bracket, plus infinity sign with its parentheses. Go ahead and pause this. I will be switching the page. So our last example, and this is a compound inequality. So it looks a little different. So the way we would read this is that negative 2, or x is in between negative 2 and 5, okay? So it's somewhere between negative 2 and 5, all right? So this is a negative 2. So we're going to put a closed circle because that is underlined, right? That's greater than or equal, or less than or equal to. Then we want to plot our 5 with our open circle, because that does not have a line underneath it, it's just less than. So then you're going to connect those two. That's where your line's going to be. Okay, it's not going to be infinity like the other ones because there's 2 stopping points. All right. So when we bring this down here to our interval notation, we have our negative 2 with a bracket and our 5 with the parentheses. Go ahead and pause it because I'm going to end the video.